Hi, I'm Angie. About 99% of you will probably press stop when you hear what I'm making today. But for those of you who search this recipe, today I'm going to show you how to make very traditional Christmas fruitcake. I've been making this fruitcake for years, and the recipe has been in my family for years. It's a British tradition to have fruitcake at Christmas time, and in our family we also give it out at weddings. It's a traditional wedding cake. I actually still have one small little piece from my wedding cake, and that's been over 20 years. Don't worry, it's in the freezer, and I probably wouldn't eat it, but fruitcake really does last a long time, and it's actually really delicious. If you've grown up with it, it's something that you really look forward to having every year. So this is actually part one of this video, and I'll have to take 2 days to make this fruitcake. Today we're doing the preparation, and then tomorrow we're going to make the actual cakes. So the first thing you're going to need to do is purchase and prepare your dried fruit that you're going to put in your cake. As you can see, I have a big variety of fruit here. It's going to take 13 cups of mixed fruit and nuts. And the amounts that you get of each kind of fruit doesn't really matter, as long as you have a total of 13 cups. So basically every year I make this, it's a little bit different because it depends on how much I put in of each one. Now I've actually gone out and got 13 different fruits, so it was easy. I went to the bulk store and I just eyeballed about a cup of each thing. It's not a cheap cake to make. It probably cost me about $35 for the fruit. Now I do have a lot of leftovers that I can use in some other Christmas recipes, but it's definitely worth it, and it is something you make only once a year and then it lasts all year. Another note is that I've actually started about 2 months before Christmas because it takes the cake at least a few weeks to ripen and let the flavors develop. So you kind of have to plan ahead. Now before I show you what we're going to do to prepare the fruit, you'll also want to make sure for tomorrow that you've got Christmas cake pans, and I'm going to show you how to prepare those. You're going to need a half dozen eggs, you're going to need some honey and some molasses, plus your regular dry ingredients, flour, and spices like cloves and cinnamon. Okay, so it's the day before, and what you want to do is get a very large pot that will hold 13 cups of something and give you room to stir. I like to use this big stainless steel pot because it has a good lid on it. What we're going to do is measure out the dried fruit and soak it in rum overnight. So as I said, I start with just a 1 cup measure, and I measure out all my fruit in advance. And it also doesn't matter about the proportions of fruit you have, and you can also add nuts. I like to add pecans, Brazil nuts, walnuts. Those are really nice. Because my husband is allergic, I don't add nuts to my fruitcake now. So let's get started, and I'm just going to dump in 13 cups of mixed fruit and nuts. So I happen to have this year dried cranberries. I always have candied cherries. So I have red ones, 1 cup of red, and 1 cup of green. Now I know these aren't the healthiest thing, but they actually look really pretty in the fruitcake, and it just wouldn't be fruitcake without them. I've got 1 cup of mixed peel, and I find it best to go to the bulk store to get these things because you can get the quantities you need of each thing, and you can really pick and choose. Now I do have one note about mixed fruit. You want to make sure you get mixed peel and read the ingredients list, because there is something called mixed fruit, and it's actually colored rutabaga, which is like turnip. So it's not really fruit at all, and it's cheaper. So you want to make sure you put out a little bit of extra money and get the real fruit. And that's why I usually buy individual things and not just something that says mixed fruit for fruitcake or mixed peel. You want the genuine thing, so read the ingredients. So I've got 1 cup of the mixed peel. Then I also have 1 cup of orange peel. 1 cup of lime peel or citron. That's the one that can sometimes be rutabaga. 1 cup of pineapple, and these are candied, so it's a mix of candied and dried fruit. When you scoop it out from the bins, you want to try and get the fruit and not all the syrupy juice at the bottom. Then I've got a mix of raisins. I've got 1 cup of California raisins and some nice dark raisins. and some golden raisins. I've got 1 cup of diced dates, and I always have dates in my recipe. They're very sweet and nice. Sometimes I'll add diced prunes, 1 cup of prunes. I don't have them this year. I've got dried apricots. These are really nice and fresh and soft. And some currants. I always have currants in my cake too. So if you wanted to add nuts, you would just reduce the quantities of some of these fruits or eliminate some of them. Put in what you like, but there you go. I've got 13 cups of candied and dried fruit. Now I'm going to stir in 1/2 cup of rum. This is excellent quality Jamaican rum. You can also use brandy, but I just really prefer it with the rum. Now I've got a nice heavy spoon here, and I'm just going to stir that all together. It smells so good with the rum. It's a little shadowy, but you can see it all there. So once it's all stirred up, you're going to put the lid on and leave it overnight. It doesn't matter if it goes a bit longer. You just want all that rum to soak into the fruit. Next, I'm going to show you how to prepare your traditional fruitcake pans with parchment paper. And then tomorrow, I'll show you the actual recipe for the cake. And it's really not difficult to make it all. You just make up a quick cake batter, stir it into the fruit, and it's definitely more fruit than batter, but it's so good. And it's really nice when it's baking in the house. It just kind of signals that Christmas is coming. Okay, so the fruit's all stirred. I'm going to put the lid on and let that sit for about 24 hours. And you just want to stir it occasionally. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the pans that you're going to use to make traditional fruitcakes. These are the fruitcake pans, and they usually come in a set of 3, either square or round. And they have removable bottoms, and they're very deep down the side. So in the set, you'll get a small, medium, and large. The small is about 4 inches. The medium is about 5.5. And the large is about 8. So every year it's a little bit different because I'm not sure what size I want to make. I sometimes mix and have round and square. Sometimes I make all small ones so that I can wrap them up and give them away, which I don't do very often, but sometimes I like to give one to my mother-in-law. Or I can do an assortment. So in order to prepare the pans, you want to line them with parchment paper. Parchment paper is almost like wax paper, but it's oven safe and non-stick. So this is the traditional way that you would line and grease your pans. And what you need to do, of course, is take out the bottoms and size them and make like a little stencil and cut that out and line it with the paper. And then also you need to cut a strip that's the width of the pan that you're using and line the sides of the pan as well. So it's a bit of a pain to do this, but what I like to do is spray it lightly with some nonstick spray or use some shortening, and that helps the paper stick to it. So as soon as you get the batter in there, it does hold it down and it's not so bad. Now you can get a fruitcake pan set at a really good quality kitchen supply store, but I was really lucky enough to get this set. I inherited with a house that I had purchased, and it was left in the basement, so I was actually really excited about that. And the other set I got at a garage sale, and I think it was like $3 for the whole set, which is really good because if you buy them new, they can be expensive, but it's one of those things that once you have them, you can use them forever, and I hope to be able to pass these down to my kids if anyone wants to continue the tradition of making fruitcake in our family. So what I'm going to do is pick an assortment. Now the recipe says that you will get 1 8-inch, which is the large, and 1 5-inch, which is almost the size of this medium one. So I like to sometimes prepare more pans than I might need, just if there's extra batter or I change my mind about what I want to make. So I'll probably do 2 small and maybe a medium and go from there. So I'll prepare that and then see you back here tomorrow and we'll make the fruitcake. Okay, I'm going to show you the pans that I've lined with the parchment paper. I just sprayed them with some nonstick spray and cut out the paper to fit the pans. I've done 2 medium, a square and a round, and 1 small one. So hopefully that will be enough for the cake batter. I've preheated the oven to just 250 degrees Fahrenheit. You're going to bake these cakes at a very low temperature for quite some time. So let's get started with the actual batter. I'm going to start by creaming our wet ingredients. I've got 1 cup of unsalted butter, that's 2 sticks, that's softened. And I'm going to use an electric mixer just to cream that so it's nice and fluffy. You want to use a nice big bowl to do this part. Then I'm going to beat in 3/4 of a cup of molasses and a 1/2 cup of honey. That's just regular liquid honey. And I'll just use the mixer to combine those. Okay, that's nice and combined now. I've scraped down the sides of the bowl. Now I'm going to beat in 6 large eggs, and I'll do that one at a time and beat well after each addition. Okay, there we go. You can tell that the batter kind of curdles a little bit, but that's okay, that's what you want. So we're just going to set aside the wet ingredients and we'll combine the dry ingredients next. For the dry ingredients, I've got 2½ cups of all-purpose flour, and I'm just going to whisk in 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves. Pretty simple. Now I'm going to beat the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients until they're well mixed. We're almost done. There you have it. I love this part because it smells really good. Now all we need to do is add in our soaked fruit and or nut mixture that we made yesterday. There's our fruit mixture that we made yesterday. It smells really good. So it's a lot, and this part's going to be a little tricky. I'm going to combine all this into our cake batter. Make sure you get every last current. Okay, now I'm just going to use a very good sturdy stainless steel spoon and mix the fruit into the cake batter. It's not a large ratio of batter to fruit. There's almost just enough batter to hold the fruit together. Now what I'm going to do is spoon this into the prepared pans and level out the top. And depending on the size of your pans, you're going to bake these anywhere from 2½ hours to 4½ hours. Because I don't know what size pans you're going to be using, I really can't tell you exactly how long it's going to take, and it depends how full you make them. You want to fill the pan about 3/4 full, but it does take a long time to bake because you're using such a low temperature, and you just have to keep inserting a tester in after about 2½ hours for small ones, and just making sure that they're cooked all the way through to the center before you take them out of the oven. If you find that the tops are browning too much, you can just cover them loosely with some foil. I'm going to start with the medium cake pans and start filling them. Just want to spoon the mixture in. I like to get them all filled first, and then I level out the tops. You kind of need to mash it into the corners just to make sure that it's nice and full. Once these are baked and cooled, I'm going to wrap them in rum-soaked cheesecloth and then some plastic wrap and some foil and put them in a cold place for several weeks, and that way they ripen. And after that, it's really fun because you can add a layer of marzipan on top and then decorate them with royal icing and then whatever toppings you want, like little poinsettia candy flowers or little dragees, the little silver balls. I'll just fill this small one. And I'll just show you how to smooth out the top. I use an offset spatula and kind of push down all the fruit. Make sure it gets evenly spread into the corners. And then just kind of smooth it out so that the fruit is covered with the batter. I'll do that to each one, and I'll pop these in the oven for anywhere from 2.5 to 4.5 hours, or maybe even longer, until the tester comes out clean. Okay, the timer's about to go off after the first 2.5 hours of baking time, and I just thought I'd show you what it looks like. You can definitely tell that they're starting to cook around the edges, but I predict that they're going to still be soft in the middle. So I've got a little tester here. And actually this one is not too bad, but I'm going to give it a little bit longer. It's still a bit soft on the top. And I'll check the medium. And they are still a little bit goopy on there, so they're going to need maybe another hour. I'll check them. And you can see I've also put a shallow grill pan with some water in the bottom of the oven on the last rack, and that just keeps the cakes moist while they bake. So I'll check this one after another 15 minutes, and I'll give the medium ones about another hour. Okay, all the fruit cakes are done now. The medium ones did take just an extra half hour. You're going to want to let them cool completely, and that's going to take a long time because they're so thick, before you remove them from the pan. So after we do that, we're going to wrap them in a lightly squeezed out soaked cheesecloth in rum, and wrap them up and keep them in a really cool place for several weeks. And I'll show you that step when the cakes have cooled.